Um, since you've been doing this, what's it like what's it been like to sort of just be a woman in this space as well, right? Because I mean,
Mm.
I recently just did a video on sort of just like the how anime can sometimes like depict women,
Oh,
sometimes, and it just be really like really crazy. Like it's sometimes like fan service and stuff like that's a thing that's like that is in our even our Western TV shows as well. But I'm like sometimes like I feel like anime can just be over the top, right? And
mm.
um I just want to know what like how do you see that from like your perspective as a woman and also liking these things? Because I I don't know. I feel like sometimes like female perspectives on the way these things are viewed are kind of just like shrugged off because it's like
Yeah.
it's shown and it's geared towards males, but I'm just like, but does it have to be that way though?
That's such a great
So yeah.
question. I realized I didn't answer your question about being a Black woman either,
All
so
right.
I'll answer to both. My experience being in the space growing up, it was a very specific experience. I talked about this with Mara Sebastian, if anybody knows her. I had her on the podcast, and we talked about this quite a bit because we both grew up as weebs,
Mhm.
basically, and like that experience is very different than the experience today. So I will say, like, perhaps I'm biased in that it was worse before. Like, definitely there was not space for women in that. Were there women at anime conventions? Were there women taking in anime? Were there women playing video games? Absolutely. But it was very much once you tried to enter the like official fandom space, if you will, it was very much like they want you to be seen, not heard. Like as soon as you try and speak about things, you're not a real fan. You're never a fan enough. Never, ever, ever are you a fan enough. It doesn't matter how much anime you watch. If you don't watch the right animes, know all the lore, all the facts, even though
Mm.
most of these anime bros do not be knowing
Come on
all
now.
that, it's not enough. And that's very much how it was back then. And online, I do still run into stuff like that. Like I will post stuff or like it's not always even about anime. It could be on those like points of Black and Asian cultural connections, and there will always be somebody ready in the comments to mansplain. And I don't take it all that seriously again because like coming from like older fandom where it was worse, like I feel like oh these are well tread waters. I know how to
Yeah.
navigate this, but it is annoying knowing that like I can watch as much anime as I want and as much I can play as many video games as I want. That it's never going to be enough for some people. Like
Yeah.
because just by virtue of being a woman, but especially a Black woman, they're
Mm.
never going to think I'm an authority on this, even though like I study so much. I watch so much anime and so much I play so many video games. In fact, I was talking to my husband about this the other day about how I forget he doesn't watch anime, but he
Yeah.
lets me rant about anime sometimes. And I was going off and I was like, and I consider myself a casual anime fan.
Mm.
But I feel like I only consider myself a casual anime fan from just like years and years and years of it not being enough for other people. Like I don't
Mm.
watch enough anime because I know so much about anime and like am I the most diehard anime fan that there ever has existed? No, but like I realize even still to this day like I try and like make myself smaller, I guess, I think, and try and like discredit how much I've been in these fandoms and how much I've been in these spaces.
Wow. That's that okay. So many questions that I want to ask. Um First, your husband's a keeper because he lets you read about it.
For
Um,
real.
um man, I dang. So have you I listened to your one episode with the young lady that I forgot her name that you were just talking about.
Oh,
Uh
Mars Sebastian.
yeah, and
Mhm.
she was even talking about sort of just the uh kind of the experience of being an anime fan and even just like
Mhm.
like her just being like being a part of that I guess the guys like kind of like crew and like being being knowledgeable on these like anime shows and being able to keep up with the guys and stuff and then like there's like sort of this expectation that you're supposed to be in your like stay in your place, which kind of just sucks because it's just like you can be an anime fan and like you can like be more knowledgeable than most men, but for some reason they don't want to accept that. And I wonder like where do you Where do you think that comes from?
Um, where does it come from? Boy,
Listen,
I wish I knew. But
you keep it as raw as possible, and I can take all the time for it.
yeah, where I think a lot of times it comes from now anime's more mainstream, I will say that, but
For sure.
I can only come at it from my perspective being, like, an older is relative, but older anime fan, like, back in the early 2000s, you know what I'm saying? Um, and anime wasn't cool, like, these were not cool kids liking anime, like, we were not
Mhm.
like the jocks, the preps, whatever you had at your schools, these were not the people watching anime, at least not open about it.
Yeah.
Uh, it was very much a nerdy thing to be into, and so this was their space though, like, if you went to anime conventions where they felt cool, like, this was their space, and I think being that often, it's like, people coming from, like, the outside, like, they feel like outcasts. There is a lot of insecurity there, and
Yeah.
so it might have felt like an intrusion on their space. It wasn't, but I think there's a lot of insecurity in their own rights to fandom because there's like people have done fandom studies. Like there are scholars who talk on these issues and how women's fandom and men's fandom look so different. And like men's fandom
Mm.
is a lot about like being the most knowledgeable and like ticking off all these boxes. And I maybe it's changing now. I can't say you could speak to that more than I could, but it was very much like that. And so to them that was the measure of fandom, whereas women are more likely to do things like write fan fiction,
Mm.
be on Tumblr for better or worse. Like that's their version of fandom and how they measure fandom, and it's very much almost like a qualitative versus quantitative approach, right? And so if you have people whose identities are very wrapped up in this fandom and they see the benchmark for being a fan as I put in all these hours studying things. I have put in all these hours in this game. I've done this, that, and the other. And they see somebody who's claiming to be a fan not doing that. Like that strikes at something in them. So
Ooh, good. That's okay.
that's how I see it. And like that doesn't make it all right. It
Yeah.
definitely doesn't. Like that's a you problem.
Mhm.
But that's from my experience what it's been. I can't say today because it is more mainstream now, but I think there's still probably some truth there to that.